Everybody, and welcome to Stranger Things with Jay, Jack, and Mike. My name is Jay.
My name is Mike.
And I'm Fat Rambo.
And welcome to the show. Yes, we are here. Earlier in the week, we did the first 4 chapters of Stranger Things 3, and we are here to close out the 3rd season of Stranger Things with the final 4 chapters.
Someone finally watched the final 4 episodes.
Yeah, Jack, so yeah, you were the kind of the
straggler.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Slacker.
But what did you think?
I hated it. Couldn't stand it.
Oh, stop.
Knew it. You said your mood was okay in the first 2 episodes, picked up in the last 2, and then it just seems like it completely fell off a cliff or fell down an elevator shaft in the last 4. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's what. No, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I thought
very entertaining. Kind of sad. Kind of
sad.
Kinda.
Well, I'm the people of Hawkins. They get over death like there's no. I mean, it's like, okay, my brother's dead. Hey, let's go have fun.
Yeah, that's true. There's the grieving process 3 months after everything occurred in the epilogue was. It ran the spectrum of mourning. I do agree with that.
Well,
what's the girl that we always make? No, the first one, the first season where she died and nobody seemed to.
Barb.
Huh?
Barb.
Yeah, Barb. It's that. I think it's a Barb syndrome. That town. It's like, okay, they are very important to us, but I don't care anymore.
I do wonder though, considering that in this instance, what like 30 people or so died, including Hopper, to the point where you had that sort of salacious
allegedly.
Yeah, but you had that like salacious expose on them where they said they died in this mall fire. It turns out it was for a very different type of reason, even though the creature involved. They were technically involved in the mall, just maybe not in their necessary solid forms. But I do wonder if this is going to, obviously, the status quo of Stranger Things is going to be affected no matter what moving forward. But I wonder how much like the town of Hawkins is really going to view themselves. Because to your point, Jack, it did seem like after season 2, everything just sort of got like swept under the rug in one year out the other with all like the government shutting down Hawkins' lab. But this time, like nearly 36 people died. Are they going to forget about that?
And I consider myself pretty mentally tough, but I would have to have therapy after everything I've gone through, what these kids go through. And no there. I mean, I know it's the 80s and, just rub some dirt on it, but.
No, I think I think maybe you're selling them all short, Jack, because I feel like they are feeling, I mean, they were all crying when they were saying goodbye.
Oh, saying goodbye, that's it. But it's like,
but I think there's still.
But there's a chance you're going to see that person again. You're never going to see that person.
But I think you assume that it's weighing. I mean, it's Joyce is leaving because there's nothing left for her there with Hopper dead. So I feel, and then you have 11 that emotional reading the letter, which is probably when I cried the most. When she read Hopper's letter.
That was a good. If Hopper is truly dead, I think he got a hero send off. I thought that was great, but I don't think he's dead.
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're all. This is a podcast. We're all pretty much in agreement that we don't think he's dead, right?
No,
right.
Well, it's the classic TV movie rule. If you don't see them die, we have to assume he's still alive.
Right, and you could assume that, like, oh, well, they said that the explosion would like vaporize him immediately, and we saw that happen to those people in the hazmat suits, but. I don't know. And you also have to feel like, we talk about this a lot on the podcast that I do with Josh as well, that I feel like the Duffer Brothers really love the cast that they work with to the point where, like, Hopper, no offense, Billy, but Hopper really feels like the first, like, major death of the series. It really seems like our ensemble has just been ballooning every season up until this point. You have to feel like they want to keep David Harbour on, right?
And now Mike's forgot about Barb, but that's okay.
and maybe maybe he'll appear in flashbacks like Bob did in the beginning of the season, or maybe he'll like appear as a figment in Eleven's imagination like Brenner did last season. I don't know. There could be creative ways to do it, but I just feel like they would not do that to Hopper, who has been such an integral part of the show from the very beginning.
What I was trying to do is the actor, the Russian prisoner actor that got fed to the monster at the end, I was trying to see if he was in any other episodes, which he wasn't. And I was trying to think, was he in the final scene? Was he there? Maybe maybe they got sent into the
upside down.
The upside down world. Maybe that's what happened but I can't find that Russian guy anywhere in the. I don't recognize him in the
Well,
things. I think
there's
maybe him and Hopper got sucked into the Upside Down world.
there's a few major theories. I think or at least some different variants of it, and one of them is maybe he ran down the other side, and then as the Russians, we assume, were leaving or getting out of there, they found Hopper and took him with them. That's probably the most realistic, I guess you could say. Maybe not realistic, but in this sense. The other one is you see him looking at the portal and then looking back at Joyce. So maybe he jumped through the portal on the Upside Down, and then the Russians on wherever that was in Russia had their own opening to the portal, and then they found him and then took him through.
That's what I believe is happening.
And then the other one was
What's the other
maybe
one?
when it blew, it transported him to Russia or something. But
That's my theory, because I feel like it would not be too strange if they went with a similar thing of what happened to 11 between seasons 1 and 2, because I feel like it was a very similar type of thing.
It was very similar.
Yeah, obviously not with nearly as much emotional heft, but it's like, oh man, 11's gone. The characters all thought 11's gone. Surprise, surprise. Beginning of episode 2 of season 2, it turns out that no, she just ended up in the Upside Down, I guess, with the Demogorgon. She may have to do that again very soon in Stranger Things, but it could be a thing where, maybe with the key, quote unquote, closing the gate, Hopper sort of got blasted through there, and some portion of the season is going to be him struggling in the Upside Down. Maybe we'll see more of the Upside Down. We really didn't see any of it this season outside of, the Mind Flayer's army talking to Billy and the you will build it, we will come type of moment.
Yeah, because there's another thing too to think about him going through the portal is he would be through the portal in the Upside Down in, I guess, the equivalent of the Upside Down Hawkins, Indiana. I don't know if this works the same way, but then I would assume if they have a portal in Russia, it would still be the same distance, right? If all is the same. I mean, it's a different
do you think
universe,
oceans exist in the Upside Down, or do you think it'd just be one big landmass for him to walk?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the distance is to walk from Hawkins, Indiana to Russia. Maybe the
they were trying to make the walk from to there to Illinois, so
right. And I love all the theories. I think there's some. To me, it was I didn't see him when they had the pan away shot of the portal as it's almost blowing up, or the key thing almost blowing up. I was like, I don't see him. And then they show the other people
where Joyce took her time, and then Billy could have been saved if she just would have done it a little sooner.
And then, she couldn't get a grip on the key, and it was in slow mo. So let's not. There's also a lot of people that are really ticked off at Susie that they're blaming her for Hopper's death, which I don't think is fair.
Susie.
I
She
agree.
had nothing. She had no idea what was happening. She
I agree.
thought, okay, I'm ticked off. My boyfriend hasn't called me in a week, so I'm going to torture him, not realizing that
yes.
If someone called you and said, "Oh, it's the end of the world," granted, these circumstances might be very different nowadays, but I think you'd say, "What are you? You're pulling my leg. Let me, catch up with you a bit."
I'm on the side back in the hate on Susie.
What? Stop it!
Come on,
What?
man.
No,
Billy
if you want to
died.
blame anybody, blame
If she-
Murray for not getting the Planck's constant right in the first place. He thought he knew it,
Amen.
and it was mess up.
Okay, so there's a lot of people to blame for Billy's death.
Or
I could blame Hopper for feeling like he needs to count to 3 to turn the key, because apparently every time he counts to 3 in episode 7 and 8, this Russian guy just comes in and kicks his ass.
blame
One,
Hopper for not
two.
breaking the number one rule in killing the bad guy. You shoot for the head, not the chest.
Yeah, I get it.
So, no hate on Susie. There's plenty of blame to go
Do
around.
you want a bunch of brain all over the rides and stuff like that? That's kind of gross.
But I think or at least the main thing where people are thinking he's definitely still alive. And when I saw it the first time I saw that episode, the kind of post credits or mid credit roll where they said not the American, I think everybody assumed that would be Hopper. But I've also seen where people think it's Papa or whatever the doctor.
Dr. Brenner, the Matthew
Brenner.
Modine character.
Oh, it could be him.
Because again, that was we didn't see him die either.
Yeah.
But I would hope it's Hopper.
And we did see in that episode from last season that nobody likes to talk about that I think 11 and her sister like hunted down
Yes.
one of the guys that was in Hawkins, and he said that Brenner was still
Still
alive.
alive.
So he might not be talking out of his ass. One thing that I found was an interesting indicator, and I don't know if this is purposeful or not, but there's so much to be said about the soundtrack of Stranger Things, but the final montage ends with the song Heroes, which is a David Bowie song, but it's covered by Peter Gabriel. That's not the first time this cover has appeared, though. It also played at the end of the 3rd episode of season 1, where there's a whole montage of what they think was Will's body being, exhumed from this quarry.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And when Mike comes home to hug his mom, and, Jonathan and Joyce embrace, like, in the middle of the road when she's running away from what she thinks is the monster. And the theming behind that episode, remember, was, like, we thought a character was dead, and he wasn't. So I wonder if that's sort of, like, now become the thematic song on behalf of the Duffer Brothers to sort of tip off the audience as to, like, everything is not as it seems.
I thought so, but it's also just a really cool cover that works really well.
Yeah.
But
well, the weird thing is that it's from like 2010 though, so that makes it really stick out as well, is because there's no other. This is not like Westworld where we got like honky tonk covers of so many popular songs for so long. So that was the one thing that really stuck out to me. Though maybe they'll be using it more, especially as we start segueing out of the 80s and into the 90s.
So, do you think we're going to get into the 90s in Stranger Things?
I mean, it's the tough question. I mean, I don't know if we ever thought we'd get out of the 60s in Mad Men, and I'm pretty sure we got there by the final season.
We're in 85, right?
85.
Yeah, so I guess it depends on, depending on when the season's filmed, they do like to, air it as alongside their cast. I think even though their cast has gotten a good amount older, this show has only taken place over like 2 to 3 years. So maybe by the time things end, if they do get a season 4 or a season 5 or a season 6, we could be looking like at 88 or 89.
So if Hopper is alive, and say this, we come back, it's a year and a half later, 2 years later, is Joyce remarried?
I mean, if you want to kind of maybe keep the whole Sam and Diane thing going on, that's probably how you do it, right?
Does she marry Murray?
Why would she marry Murray?
I don't know. They seem to have some kind of...
You don't marry a man who doesn't know Planck's constant, Jack. That's a rule of thumb.
He can always call young Phoebe Cates.
A well-known deal breaker in the 80s.
That'd be so... I mean, my heart goes out for Joyce. She's one of the unluckiest characters.
Yes.
Basically, since like Nora Durst from The Leftovers, I don't think have we seen a more unlucky character in television. So I wish her all the best, but you have to imagine that now she's going to keep lighting the candle for Hopper, right? Do you really think she's going to move on after she's lost one boyfriend and one like near boyfriend in a row?
Well, she's still young, attractive. I mean, I don't know.
Well, she's moving to a new town. We don't know what town they're moving to, right?
No. Do you guys have any guesses as to where you think the Byers plus L would go?
Well, I guess where's the nearest big city?
Probably
Indianapolis.
Probably Chicago.
Yeah, probably Chicago.
Oh yeah.
Chicago would be cool because there's obviously the 80s influence, and then you have the John Hughes influence, which like all of his stories are based in Chicago. So I think that would be a neat.
She marries Uncle Buck.
Oh God. Rest in peace.
Or we will see Jonathan like become the John Bender like figure in the Breakfast Club. Or actually, I think he'd be more like the Ali Sheedy character in the Breakfast Club scenario that they're going to go for here.
Yeah, probably. There you go.
See, I think Chicago's a good guess because I feel like there's Ferris Bueller stuff you could do. Like, there's just a lot of. Again, they love tapping the 80s well, and I think there's a lot of good options for Chi-Town.
Yeah. Plus, outside of that one episode, again, that people don't talk about, it's been all a small town horror stuff. We've barely seen any like big city 80s stuff, to your point, Jay. And it really does seem like, especially this season, I think I said this in our last podcast, but I think they've really expanded what they've been, referencing from 80s horror to just 80s pop culture in general. So I think that's a great point that, I wouldn't say that Ferris Bueller and 16 Candles and all that stuff is necessarily horror, but considering that we're getting like new Coke ads and music videos to the never-ending story in Stranger Things. I think we've sort of like pushed those limits already.
I did like the debate when Lucas was drinking the new formula, the new Coke, and of course Mike was angry about it. But
well,
they were debating, how do you drink that?
Well, can I ask about that? Because I initially was not a fan of it because it really felt like it was just like an underlining commercial, like, oh, I mean, they, as Jay brought up last time, they brought out new Coke again for this. It really felt like they had to pay lip service to Coke, and so they really underlined the point, maybe overly so in this scene. But from what I've been reading up on, and this is just due to my own, youth betraying me here, were people like legitimately having those types of debates when new Coke came out?
Oh yeah.
85. The new Coke thing is just a really fascinating.
It was almost another civil war. It was bad.
Jack is generally hyperbolic, but he's actually accurate in this situation. Like, it became because Coca-Cola is a Southern drink, so like Southern people were like ticked off that they were taking on this Yankee Pepsi style take. Like, it was on so many levels. The whole new Coke thing was insane. And one of my favorite things at the World of Coke exhibit in Atlanta, Georgia, is they have like a whole section or a part of the section about new Coke and just the absolute backlash that happened in 2 months. Like, within 2 months, they had to bring back Coke Class or the original formula.
Plus, I think it worked in the show because Mike is angry anyway, so it was perfect for him to be the one complaining about it.
But
plus Lucas always seems to be like, at least this season, was someone who's just been very aloof, especially in his relationship with Max. So it also makes sense that he'd be like, God, this new Coke is awesome. Everyone thinks so, right?
But I love it because it also parallels, I think. It was one of those, it was a pre-internet thing where there's a whole bunch of backlash to a change. And it's something that you see, especially in nerd culture a lot, where a reboot or something will happen and then everybody gets ticked off because you're ruining my childhood.
Jay, you'd have to go pretty far under the sea to see if there's any controversies like that coming up nowadays.
Yeah, right? And so I didn't find it as an ad. Like, I found it as a very allegorical representation of, I love how he tied it to the original thing, to the remake of Thing. And then there's also, I think, arguments that people make about the, season 1 of Stranger Things to season 2. Like, I feel like it had a lot of good subtext that, while it was kind of maybe seemed like a fun aside, but I thought it was a neat little back and forth.
That was what I was thinking. Okay, 11 could do better than Mike because he cares more about the new formula than her chopped up leg and cut up leg and stuff like that. And so I said, she's bleeding, and of course they left the blood all over the floor and stuff like that. But I said, come on, Mike, just lighten up.
Well, I mean, I think that he was trying to find he was distracted. He wanted to find the time to tell his girlfriend that he loved her. So I think he was looking for any sort of eager distraction. And when it came to arguing with Lucas over semantics, I think he was totally
well. I think when
your
girlfriend's laying there bleeding, that's usually the best time to say, you know what, I love you.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because you can't. I mean, it's like, okay, I if you're gonna say it, say something that's gonna comfort her. But maybe that would have freaked her out. I don't know.
Again, I think we can Monday morning quarterback this as much as we want. But
Mike makes a lot of mistakes.
Well, what is he, 14, 15 in the show? Like,
yeah, and it's his first girlfriend, and I think he makes much fewer mistakes than Lucas does.
Yes.
So I think
like you said, I don't think Lucas cares.
But I think if we're power ranking boyfriends in relationships, it's gotta be like Dustin 1, Jonathan 2, Mike 3, Lucas 4 is probably how I would rank them. And Ted Wheeler, I don't know, put him in at like -1, 0. If he's either so good or so bad that his wife is like totally fine with the situation they're in right now.
How about holding your daughter on the Ferris wheel when you're about 400 feet up in the air? But it's okay.
Well, they weren't. I mean, there were issues in between them. I wouldn't criticize.
Why are we stopping up here?
Because she paid him so they could sit and watch the fireworks. Because Nancy's romantic.
I do hope that with the slightly extended role of Karen Wheeler this season, I really do hope we get more of Ted Wheeler as well. Whether it's just him playing him up more as a dingus. I was more surprised by the fact that it wasn't the Ferris wheel, that they took Baby Holly into that Gravitron, which is such a nasty type of ride if you're really susceptible to motion sickness.
Well, maybe she isn't. I mean, maybe she's cool with it. I don't know. Like, I wasn't. I love fairs, but was deathly afraid of carting rides. So I never really rode. I never rode a Gravitron. I never rode one of those things that kind of flips upside down and stuff like that.
Mike is like his dad because Ted married up, right? He married above his pay scale. And so you got to say the same thing with Mike, right?
Well, we don't know. They may not stay married.
Well, they're not married, but
now they're being apart.
He's going out with someone that's above his pay scale. So
and
Mike, if you're listening, I'm just speaking from the heart.
Mike, this fictional character, if you're listening.
Well, Mike would be probably 40 something. He'd be nearly 50 nowadays. So Lord hopes he has his life together by this point.
That's a good
point. I don't know. He's probably the old man yelling at the clouds. I don't.
So he's you, Jack.
He is, but I'm not that.
Is that why you give Mike our time? Were you Mike?
No, I wasn't Mike. No. There's no way I would yell at my parents. I could not get away with that. There's no way. I wasn't just about the kids in the 80s.
He was just being an annoying teenager, to be honest. Like, it wasn't that bad.
And also, these parents are not the most, attentive. I think Mrs. Wheeler's always there for a good pep talk, but I mean, she said it at the carnival to Joyce of oh yeah, the boys are around here somewhere. Where again, they've been missing for 3 to 5 days at this point, just off on their own.
Do you think if Mrs. Wheeler was in charge of the key, she would have turned it faster since she had the hots for Billy?
Well, I don't think she knew that Billy was have any. I mean, I don't even think Joyce knew about Billy in that whole situation, because they assumed that they were all going to Murray's place in Illinois. Right. I think. Well,
I don't know, because weren't they all on the same radio frequency?
Oh, that's
right.
How
Dustin was able to embarrass himself. So you can assume that when Griswold family codename said the wire got taken out, we have to go back into the mall, that they would know about that.
That's true.
I did like Murray's saying bald eagle.
Yes.
I was gonna say, Jack, I'm very surprised you did not call in his bald eagle.
I know. I figured you'd be making so many more comments about that.
It was, but I had to go with Fat Rambo because it cracked me up. Bald eagle just made me cry. So
should we give a quick? I know we talked about. We'll definitely talk about another dead character in Billy. We spent a lot of time on Hopper, deservedly so, because I thought no matter what his fate is, I thought he had a really nice emotional send off. And he got a date with Joyce that unfortunately didn't get acted upon. But should we talk about the rise and fall of poor Alexi, who became a very quick fan favorite of season 3?
Yeah, that was tough, especially because we nickname our Alexander Lexi. He was just a really fun character. But I mean, I understand why he got killed. But it was just really tragic how it happened. Because he's obviously comes in American culture. He's all about it. It was a cherry Slurpee was his preferred. Whoppers, Marlboro.
And today is Slurpee Day.
Yes. So are you guys cherry or strawberry people?
I'm blue, whatever blue is.
I like the cola strawberry.
I'm not a big
as long as the formula stays. As long as the formula stays the original.
You don't want to rant on new Coke.
Cola Slurpee's gross. I know some people love it, but to me it's just I'd rather just get a soda instead of have a soda Slurpee.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a Slurpee in 20 years because they're free today.
Yeah.
And I'm surrounded by 7-Elevens. My wife goes, "Why don't you go get one?" I go, "I don't know."
If a good Slurpee's really good, and there's not a lot of 7-Elevens in North Carolina. I don't think there's any in Raleigh, but there's something magical about a Slurpee that a slushy or an icy or whatever, any other gas station, Sheetz, AM, PM, whatever, just does not compare to
Roscoe's gas station.
The Slurpee. of
Here's
7-Eleven.
here's a theory. You know that Alexei loved his Slurpees. There's that great shot, image that's been used so many times on the internet in the few weeks since Stranger Things came out of him, sipping the Slurpee in the backseat as Hopper talks about how he's a child murderer. We do know that the Mind Flayer likes it cold. Could it be that maybe the Mind Flayer had incepted Alexei this whole time without anybody knowing it?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna say no, but I think it's a fun theory. I think that's
Isn't
fun.
it Murray's fault that Alexei died?
Yeah, I will say
Kinda.
that, Murray basically being like, screw their orders. We're going to have you, this, very rogue Russian agent, walk into the middle of this giant public place when we know that we're being tailed to have a good time, which is weird. Again, it feels a little out of character for Murray because
Especially for Murray.
Yeah, he's super. I mean, even like the 2 episodes beforehand, he looked down the barrel of a gun at Alexei. It is a little weird that he has a lapse in judgment here, though. I guess I would say the last 2 episodes are not the best we've seen of Murray Bauman. He's great at setting people up, but not so great when it comes to these things.
He was anti-Russian, but he developed a friendship.
Well, I think that's maybe
with the Russian, and I think that's what threw him. That's what got his guard down.
Yeah, I agree, Jack. I think you could say the relationship that he developed with Alexei, his heart, his anti-Russian heart grew 3 sizes that day. Maybe.
Because it's like any of us that grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we were brought up to hate the Ruskies, but when you met one, you go, "Oh, you're not bad."
But because he also had that conversation with the Russian guard where he's like, he was nice.
Yeah.
Should invite him for a barbecue after this.
Of course, this is after Alexei got killed.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember because I know that Reddit had pointed out that Murray actually did say he had a theory there was a Russian spy in Hawkins in season 2. But did he talk about the fact that he knew Russian in season 2? I'm just trying to figure out how Hopper immediately thought of, okay, the first person I know Russian is Murray. Let me hop state lines to find him.
It wasn't really dropped last year. To me, if they knew they were going to have this plot line in season 3, they probably would have dropped a heavier hint in season 2. Because I agree, I don't recall it. So maybe we can just assume they had a conversation about it outside of.
Maybe they didn't know Murray was going to be so popular.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, but as we talked about, I think the Duffers also, in addition to keeping their cast relatively together and alive, they also do like to take the gauge of the internet and see, okay, what characters do people like? That's how we got this whole like Justice for Barb storyline in season 2. Mm-hmm. So I could very much see a thing of like, oh yeah, people were liking that kooky Murray character. Let's make him play a larger part in season 3. To the point where, depending on where we go in season 4, he could become an Erica. He could become like a series regular.
I like him because I like when he went to Joyce. He goes, "I'm sorry, is my free translation not good enough for you?"
No, he's great. I really enjoyed.
Bald-headed people are funny. They don't have to be always the villain. They don't.
Children.
Remember, Hollywood, the bald guy doesn't always have to be the bad guy.
Bald eagle.
And he also got like a little bit of a hero moment. Like last time, I think he was more so used as an accessory where, Nancy and Jonathan contacted him and he was the instrument to help disseminate this information and get Hawkins' lab shut down. But here he has his own little like Die Hard and Daisy Dukes moment where he gets to crawl through the air ducts and be the one to, put the key on the fritz. And I thought for a second that Murray might die just because I was like, okay, this is sort of the same thing with Billy. Like this is a minor enough character that I could see them reasonably doing this to thin out the cast a little bit. But I'm happy that he stuck through because I really do love Brett Gelman, and I hope as weirder and weirder things happen on the show, you need someone who like is an expert in the weird to guide us along, and that's where Murray comes in.
Yeah, I think. I had the same thought because I was like, oh, once they added a third person. Somebody can't come out of they have to lose at least one person in this
and they did
just not the one I thought
it was the one guy who didn't want it to be a 3-person plan.
I know.
Exactly.
But no, I dug Murray. Alexei, he was awesome.
Why do you bring Joyce? Because you needed someone else to turn the key.
You needed two people on the key.
The initial plan was, okay, 2 people are going to go. They're going to turn the keys and turn off the machine. But as Alexei pointed out before he ended up, doing the death march into the fun fair, he said, well, I mean, the thing about turning off the machine is that people can very easily turn it back on when all is said and done. And so he came up with this new idea to blow up the machine. And so the reason why it had to be 3 people is so 2 people turn off the machine and 1 person just futzes with a bunch of different pipes and things to make it go haywire.
But here's, I guess, in retrospect, again, if we're going to blame people for different things, the cavalry came. Dr. Owens did come, maybe 10 minutes.
A little late.
Yeah, a little late, but he was pretty close to whenever they did shut it off. It seemingly that was the case. Maybe we don't know. Maybe it was 10 hours late or something. But so they could have just shut it off and then assume that Owens and the U.S. government, again, that's maybe putting a lot of trust in.
But this is Stranger Things. Remember when they took over Hawkins' lab last season and they didn't close the gate? In fact, they opened it more to explore the upside down.
That's true.
I also wonder when it comes to Owens showing up at the last second, which 10-second Paul Reiser cameo, because we saw, Jim call this really suspect number with the quote unquote Philadelphia Public Library, and then Joyce sort of gives, the typical older white lady customer service response of I demand,
or the angry PTA
manager.
member.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the question is did Joyce's response speed them along even further? Do you think it pushed? Do you think they were pissed off about it and that prevented them from coming, sooner?
I think hers maybe got a move because to me, she called back and the guy seemingly hadn't done anything, and then he was like, "Okay, all right, I'll get to it." It seemed like that maybe it was more effective, but they didn't really explore that too much. But that's how I assumed it, just because the guy on the other end of the phone seemed more okay. I got to get my ass in gear.
Ironically, Paul Reiser's little clip, the little cameo there, lasted longer than his last sitcom.
Ooh. Did he have another one after Mad About You?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It lasted just about like that.
Aw.
I'm kidding, Paul. Right? I love you, Paul. I loved you in what was that movie with
Aliens?
Not Aliens. He was in a movie with everybody. Gutenberg and
Police Academy.
No, not Police Academy. No. It was a serious movie.
The Big Chill.
No, it was about Baltimore. What I'm drawing.
Oh, The Wire.
No. Oh, I'll remember it. It was the diner. I was going to say it was about a diner. If you haven't seen Diner,
Diner. Okay,
go see Diner. It's great.
It's
got what's his name? The guy that had all the plastic surgery.
Do we think the U.S. government and Dr. Owens, or Hawkins' lab crew weren't really featured at all? They were kind of a non-player. Russians kind of filled in that part. But with him and the cavalry coming in at the end of this season, do we assume they're going to be a big part in possibly Stranger Things 4 or 5?
I think so.
I don't know, actually, because you have to think about what is the status of Hawkins, and maybe yes, if they feel okay, we really need to keep a lid on this place. Apparently, we can't turn our back without something wrong going here. Maybe. I feel like we're heading towards a Stranger Things season where things are more divided, and we're spending less time in Hawkins, given where the buyers are going. So I could see that as an excuse to not so much focus on that, especially because, to your point, Jay, if the Russians have replaced Hawkins' lab as the big government baddies, and now it seems like we're set up for another season of them at least, why do we feel like we need to include the military as well?
Well, because they have, we assume, an opening to the gate. Now, you could also say that Demogorgon that they got was from the Hawkins gate because we saw Erica seeing that big, Jurassic Park-esque cage. That maybe they were transporting out Demogorgons from their open gate and then taking them to Russia, or they have an open gate. I can't remember the town that they showed it in Russia, and they're taking
Kamchatka, which I think is just an area in Russia.
Okay.
Well, do the Russians and Americans work together? Because we're not done with the Upside Down world.
No, but I don't see them. This was Cold War. The U.S. government's not working.
Well,
with
you had the space station. Eventually they work together. So do they work together on this thing? I mean, it's something. It's something that, come on, if this was real life, it's something that would be so curious that they'd still risk people's lives to find out what.
I think
the
it
hell's
depends on
going
the angle they're
I
taking.
personally think the Russians are still going to be the big bad in season 4, and I think what makes them, I mean, I think we can all admit that I think the Russians, for being presented as like these big evil people in the cold open of the season, were a little fuddy-duddy in this season when push came to shove. They were a little more like a little less Blofeld and a little more Dr. Evil in terms of the way they were operating things.
Well, say goodbye to daylight.
Yeah, well, then, like, like not noticing these people walking around in sailor suits, having like one guy stab a comms room and get beaten easily. And then that's out of like typical 80s action movie things, but I think it's still fun to watch. But I think that what the post-credit scene told me, besides the American thing, is that it seems like Russia, in my opinion, is trying to or has already weaponized creatures from the Upside Down. And I do think that this is how they'll try to make an attack on the U.S. or on our characters, is utilizing these ghastly, monstrous creatures to unleash hell. So I don't know if it'll be a Russia and America thing working together to stymie the Upside Down. I think it's now America versus Russia and the Upside Down.
The thing that, and to you saying that maybe they've weaponized these creatures, it would almost have to be for this Demogorgon, right? And it may not, maybe it's evolved or something, but season 1 Demogorgon is photosensitive. It seems like it can go back and forth in between the Upside Down and the actual Hawkins, and this Demogorgon seems to be in a cage. Their lights are on, even though it's kind of dimly lit. So, like, how are they able to control this thing more, or how have they figured out how to control it? I think it would be just an interesting.
Well, feed it,
subplot
give it its favorite meal, a little Russian every day. So, right?
Little Russian always goes down easy.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be interesting to see in season 4, because they said, I remember when they were talking about season 2, how they were looking at a bunch of sequels and their favorite sequels like Empire Strikes Back, Aliens, but it almost ended more like A New Hope, where everything was somewhat neatly tidied up from the first season into season 2, whereas the end of season 3 is much more like the midpoint in the classic hero's journey, where the team is split up. It's kind of their darkest moment. All these kinds of things, and you don't know what the future is going to hold. And how are things going to move forward from here, or how do you get the team back together? And that's where I find season 4. If it is going to be, maybe it's a Chicago story, a Russian story, and maybe still a little bit of Hawkins. Who knows? But I'd be curious to see how that plays out.
If Hopper's still alive, how do they find out?
Maybe that's the Russian story.
From
more
Russia?
code. Now that Robin seems to be like a permanent addition to the cast, I would not be surprised. That's her superpower.
And maybe Susie Phoebe Cates figures it out too. So, and maybe that's what Murray's job will be.
Maybe
because they know they think he's dead.
They think he was dead.
So this
Hopper?
Guy's all the way in Russia, in a Russian prison, Russian gulag.
If that's him in there, if that's him.
Well, if it's not, will you be? If he is truly dead, will you guys be disappointed? Or did he get enough?
No,
did he get enough to send off?
I mean, this was, if you look back on it, I would say that the Jim Hopper character was really drawn to extremes one way or the other. Like, I feel like the first few episodes, he was like I say this on the other podcast, he's more of like the angry sitcom dad. Like, he was giving me so many shades of like a Tim Allen in Last Man Standing, of like, I don't know how to handle this teenage girl. And he was doing like these ridiculously angry things. We see it there when he has like spats with Joyce throughout the season. But then he has like very deeply emotional moments, like we see when he's writing his letter. So I feel like if you are saying, hey, this is a curtain call for David Harbour, he's got a lot to do in the course of this season from both a comedic and dramatic proportion. So I could imagine if we're not, thinking about the plot armor of it all, I think it's a respectable way to, say goodbye to the character.
Now, is Mike happy if he's gone?
I don't think he's happy because 11 went
Because,
with
yeah,
the
moved
buyers
away.
anyway.
Yeah, but he was having problems with with him anyway. So
That's
Joyce
pretty
seems
dark.
a little more laid back.
So I guess the question is, would you rather be in a good long distance relationship or a troubled close distance relationship? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I think Joyce she forgets about her kids half the time, right?
Well,
So
I think
11 could be gone for a couple of months and she'd be like, oh, she's just off doing stuff.
Here's the thing. With Hopper, I think they had their moment where, and again, he kind of had that conclusion where, she is growing up. The relationship's not the same. You are growing up. You are becoming an adult, and you're able to make your own decisions. So I think, him, when they're all together in the Starcourt Mall, and he says, take care of her, or something like that, when they're leaving, I think that is kind of the passing of the torch, saying that, you're okay, we're okay, or whatever.
Well, does
does
Mike need to lighten up then?
You are going in so
Yeah.
hard on this poor kid.
Yes.
I can't stand him.
Whoa. I think Mike was far more enjoyable this season than last season. Way better than
Completely
emo
agree.
Mike.
I would say that LVP of this season by far, and this is not the actor's fault at all, but it's got to go to poor Zombie Boy, to poor Will Byers, because outside of him grabbing his neck every episode, what did Will do the last half of the season?
He cried when he's behind the car. He was upset.
And I felt horrible about that because he was the one in episode 3 who was like torn to pieces. Literally, he tore Castle Byers to pieces over the fact that like all his friends were going apart, and he clearly, did not want to move on the way that they did, and that was sort of represented in that. But man, I just felt like he's such a pivotal role in the first couple of seasons to have him sort of like designated to, oh yeah, he's going to be like the watchman and just signal to everybody when the mind flayer is there, even if he's like 10 feet away and everybody knows that he's there. It's sort of like it's just a sucky way to demote him.
Maybe what drove me against Mike was when they were in the Hopper and him were in the truck, and he kind of cussed him out, because having 2 teenage daughters at one point, if anyone would have talked to me that way, no. I wouldn't be writing no letter.
Sounds
it's really
good,
fun
Jack.
though, because I think, Jack, the reason why you don't like Mike is simultaneously an experience you had when you were a teenager and the experience of having teenagers as children.
Yeah, because you just didn't. Come on. No, you don't talk to your girlfriend, dad that way, or mom either way. You just don't do it.
Moving on.
I did agree with Mike on the Coke debate, though. So it's not all hate.
I'm with you, Mike, about poor Will. And it's almost, but I do also kind of see, like, Will has been through some shit. Like, season 1, season 2, like, the poor guy, I mean, torture after torture, having to somehow survive the Upside Down, and then being used as one of the Mind Flayer's puppets in season 2, being possessed, essentially, and then having to be exorcised of that demon. Like, maybe he deserved a season of being a little bit more on autopilot, aside from the being upset that some of his friends are, moving on to different things in life.
I think what hurt me most about Will was the fact that we kept watching him wearing those shorts, going, man, we used to wear those. God, jeez.
The torn jean shorts?
Yeah, get some sweatpants there, Will. You're bringing back some bad men. We thought we were cool, but looking back, we weren't.
I think for Wilmore, too, is maybe a new hairstyle. Maybe he likes it. I don't know. But he needs a new hairstyle.
I don't know. I would say that the Byers boys probably had the least amount to do, even though Jonathan did get involved in what I think, and this will be coming up in an episode 5 podcast I'm doing, is I think that hospital stuff might be like the most horror that Stranger Things has done outside of like Will's actual disappearance in season 1. That was between like the Shining-esque stuff with, Jake Busey and Tom the editor following them, to like the monster becoming alive and, screaming in Nancy's face. Like there was a lot of scary ass stuff going on between episode 5 and 6 that I really enjoyed.
Well, I was going to say earlier, the way they were taking, both him and Nancy were taking quite the beating. The kids today couldn't handle that. Am I right?
Well, I don't think humans in general couldn't handle it.
Jonathan got hit in the back with that chair.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, that would have broke. It hurt my back. I mean,
well, he was hobbling for a little bit, but yeah, I was totally like, okay, I think he might just be like out of commission. But he did really have that really fun moment where, like, very cathartic, I think, for Nancy especially, to get to bash in this guy that's been haranguing her in the newsroom with a fire extinguisher, even if he's not actually him. I'm sure she felt super good about it.
I did enjoy that part.
My teeth hurt though during that scene when he smashed in with the fire hydrant. But no, I think I'm glad you brought this up, Mike, because there was just some really cool, horror set pieces, action set pieces, in these last 4 episodes. Like the hospital scene was amazing. You had the Elle going into actually trying to get into Billy's mind, and just like the storm.
I really like that imagery, because it was less about like, when she did the Terry Ives thing back in season 2, it was more so like turning the pages of a storybook.
Yep.
This was like going through like an interpretive dance that represents his memories. And even though we did get some moments, stuck in there, I think that, and while I will say I don't know if Dacre Montgomery's performance in season 3 makes up for how bad the character was in season 2, I think both he did such a stellar job here, and I think they did a really interesting job fleshing out this Billy character to not only show, where he's coming from, because we knew that his dad was abusive, but we didn't know the story with his mom, but to also give him some humanity, ironically, at the moment where he has like the least amount of humanity at the end of the season.
Well, I cared about his death. Mm-hmm. I didn't want him to die.
Yeah.
And then when he died, you're like going, oh, come on, Joyce.
It was something they did on Lost a lot, like where you have somebody like, oh, he's the worst. So then they get you, oh, I just like him. Like, oh, nope, shot. Ana Lucia shot him. No.
Yeah.
I think that's what they like attempted to do with like Ana Lucia. But I think that, because wasn't her, I'm pretty sure like her lone flashback episode was the big surprise one where Michael shot her and Libby.
Yep. I think I liked it. And Jack, I was kind of curious to get your thoughts on it, just because I know you're like a flashback addict. You need a backstory. Like, you want to see a backstory. It's like your favorite thing in media.
I like to know.
So
my wife hates him, but I like to know. I like to know more about the character.
But this is a really neat way to do it and not have it be like how other kind of flashbacks go. Did you like how it was?
I think Mike said, I loved it. I thought it was great. And it actually, you're seeing at first I didn't know what was going on. I go, oh, that's Billy. Oh, as a kid, he's happy. His mom is happy, and all this different stuff going on. Then you see the dad who's very abusive and big asshole and all that different stuff. And you go, oh, Billy is there's a reason why Billy acts the way he does. And there's I think we talked about in the last podcast when he's in the sauna. I think that was real Billy for a while there, that he was truly upset about what he was doing. No one wants to be their asshole dad if the dad's an asshole. So,
trust me.
Yeah. So So I liked it. I thought it was great. I thought it worked great.
And it led to this really cool scene where, first off, I was very confused as well at first, because when I saw Elle falling back, I thought it was like, oh, now mentally she's like on this beach somewhere, like the mind flayer sent her somewhere away, and that's how he got to her. But you have this really crazy scene where she thinks that she, comes back to reality again, but it turns out that like she's still in this sort of like netherworld, and here's Billy as the mind flayer going into this like really creepy monologue of, you shouldn't have looked for me because now I see you, we all can see you, like you're gonna let us in and I'm gonna destroy you and everybody else. But the weird thing is he has this like tear rolling down his eye, and it's such a complicated performance, because he's talking with the cocksureness of the mind flayer, but with like this emotional fear that comes from Billy being the one to say it. And that's just, I mean, it's walking a really, really thin line, almost as thin as his mustache, that I think it's done super well. And the fact that, while he does get the typical action hero thing of like getting positively slaughtered and still having, words to say on his deathbed, I think the final words of him saying, I'm sorry to Max, considering what we experienced in the storm, makes a lot of sense, considering that from what we've seen in Stranger Things, she is the person that he is wronged the most. So if there's one person he has to make amends with before passing on, it would make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And then,
so I thought, I thought it was the Billy character last season. I think we talked about it. why is he here? And then now it's just like, okay, this was, I thought it was excellent. I thought they did it very well.
Well, I saw some interviews with Dacre because he kind of did a bit of the press junket this year, and he really did want to dig into that, and because he said he was bullied as a kid, and when he was approaching this character, he really wanted to study why are bullies bullies, and that's generally the case. When somebody's a bully, it's because they have been bullied themselves, and that's how they're trying to get out those emotions, whatever those are. I think they did a really good job. They hinted at it last season, but it was a really compelling story. And to me, there's a lot of 80s influence, but this one, to me, a lot of Inception influence. Because when she first hit the beach, I was like, oh, man, are they on like the 5th level of Inception? Now she's not going to be able to get back.
And you'd think that we get more of that in season 4, but get another change of the status quo. I think that seems like 11 lost her powers, either like the little bit of the mind flayer that got into her leg, like sucked it out of her. Maybe she has some sort of like weird mental thing going on where she doesn't believe that she can do it. But I mean, Mike's relying on Cerebro at this point to talk to 11 because she can't really find him anymore mentally.
Well, I think I think I love the fact, not that she was injured and she couldn't do it, but I think we talked about it on the last episode. She's the cheat code. She's the human cheat code. And it's not very compelling when she can just destroy the bad guy every single time. So it was awesome that everyone around her were the ones that kind of had to take on the bad guys, the big bads.
Well, it was nice that store couldn't sell all their fireworks on the 4th of July.
Trust me, it happens. We've been to Target, all these places that are just still chock full of fireworks.
I know.
Yeah,
it didn't look like they sold any.
When would you say, in terms of history, when stores sort of cracked down on? Because I feel like those types of intense fireworks, and granted, I'm sort of coming from an area of the country that I think cracks down on that, but I feel like that's something that would be like sold, in a factory and like, a much more state that's liberal with those types of laws. I feel like nowadays we don't usually see those types of powerful explosives that really could, distract and incapacitate such a big monster in stores nowadays.
It's state by state. Like, you can get those in South Carolina. Like, people go to south of the border or below on 95 and get the fireworks. I know, because New York's pretty strict, so I know Colleen's uncle and her cousin would drive to South Carolina to get like the good fireworks.
When I was a kid here, people used to go to Mexico because California you can't buy them. And they'd get their M80s and all their other stuff and drop them in the school toilets and stuff like that. They'd go down to Mexico and get the fireworks.
So I think I could, especially even in the 80s, and I don't know Indiana's fireworks laws, but it could very well be. And I know that the Duffer Brothers grew up in North Carolina, so for them and their perspective, they probably could have got some really awesome fireworks in the 80s. But that brings up another set piece I want to talk about, like just how cool that scene was in the mall, the Battle of Starcourt Mall, and when all the fireworks are going off. Like, that's just to me, it's just like a dazzling display of Technicolor. Like, it was just a really cool actions, and like so much stuff is going on. And I just remember watching for the first time, and I've watched it again since. But it's just a beautiful, horrifying experience. It was just really cool. I was like, this is amazing.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, we talked about it last time that I think maybe it's the summer or the holiday, but this is a more colorful season of Stranger Things. And I think that comes out in both the actual lighting and also the writing. I think there's been a lot of like wackier comedy going on in this season of Stranger Things, which I know I enjoyed, even though I think there were maybe some moments that hit and miss, but that's natural with comedy. But yeah, I mean, I loved the Battle of Starcourt just because you had the flashes with the fireworks, but you had like the blinking red and blue neon lights. And then once, Billy and Hopper are dead, it's like a nice blue wash over everything. There's a lot of just really cool stuff going on. And I totally agree with you, Jay. As much as I did not want to see 11 in pain, I feel like nearly everyone had like something to do
Mhm.
as a result. So it wasn't
Right.
so much so, okay, everybody hide behind 11 and she'll save us surely. It's more so like, what role is each person going to play in,
Yeah.
completing this mission, no matter how embarrassing some of those tasks may be.
Let's see what other things here. I want to make sure we're kind of coming up on an hour, so I want to make sure we
Can we
kinda get to
can we
everything.
talk about the Robin thing? Because I am
Yes.
so intrigued to hear your guys' thoughts about that.
I loved it. I thought because they're kind of going for the classic '80s trope, like the popular jock
the
falls for
ponytail girl.
Yeah, falls for the nerdy girl.
The she's all bad, right?
Yes. And I love that they kind of didn't go that route. Where in the show, generally, they kind of follow the 80s tropes pretty hard. So I love that they kind of didn't go that way. And I love Steve Harrington's response. Like, I thought, like, at the end of... I think we liked him at the end of season 1. I think we loved him at the end of season 2. And I probably loved him even more at the end of season 3. Just, I thought it was just really neat to see their relationship and not have it have to be predicated on them being in a romantic relationship, but just being a really good friendship. And I really loved it.
I liked it, but at first I was like, "Oh, poor Steve just opened up his heart, and she doesn't love him back." Then I go, "Oh, all right, I'm cool with it."
I thought I kind of teared up myself. I thought it was beautiful.
This, quite honestly, might have been one of my favorite scenes in the season, and that's pretty crazy that one of my favorite scenes was nothing that involved, monster-based elements or horror-based elements. It was two characters, coming down from their extreme high, which caused a lot of really fun moments. And poor Dustin and Erica had to be the parents to, like, drag them up.
Dustin was like, one thing I know is I'm never going to be a parent.
Yeah, and I loved Erica Robin just being like super tripped out with like, we're all gonna die, little man. I think, but I think that's one side of their great performances, and the other one here with Joe Keery and Maya Hawke is just how, like, I don't know, like, down to earth it was. And I think for a show that has started off really grounded and maybe not gone to such grounded places, especially in its third season, it really like hit like a freight train in the best way. And I love that, while this is a send-up of the 80s, this is a show that's made in 2019. And we live in a day and age where different types of sexuality are being embraced each and every day. So I'm glad that we took a step here where not a lot of 80s culture was really, including gay characters, especially ones that were not stereotypes. Mm-hmm. And the 80s was a very tough time for gay culture. So I thought it was a really cool way to reveal it. Like you said, Jay, I think, we were all waiting, including Dustin and Erica, for the two of them to get together. I thought it was a really fun swerve. And I think that Steve also sort of realized, maybe I don't need a girlfriend. Maybe I just need a companion. And I think between Dustin and Robin, he's found that. And so he's a much dweebier Steve than he was even in season 2, but he's happier at the end of the day.
Yeah. What I liked about with Steve is in season 2, Billy always seemed to get the best of him, right? He was the better basketball player, He was just the better all-around. But Steve's the one that came back and he hits Billy's car, he saves the Griswold group. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like, all right, Steve. All right, way to go, Steve.
Plus, he finally won a fight. He beat the Russian guy. I love that.
And then got his ass.
Yes.
I mean, this might be I don't know. Is it this or Billy? Who whooped Steve's ass worse? Because I know his eyes were swollen more when Billy kicked his butt and the kids like dragged him out to find the tunnels. But like, I mean, he got literally tortured in this season.
Oh,
by comparison.
It's not a Stranger Things season without just Steve Harrington getting the crap beat out of him.
I go, don't pull the fingernails. No, I can't do that. Luckily he talked.
But yeah, no, I think the Billy beating seemed worse, even though this one was because this was like full on Russian dudes punching him full like stop without him being able to like defend himself at all because his arms were tied behind his back. So
yeah.
I'm going to say that one's probably worse.
Those Russians are cowards.
Speaking of which, I know I expressed my opinions before. Did you guys have any thoughts? Because we obviously found out much more about the Russian operation as we went into their base in the back half of the season. Did you have any thoughts about the way they were portrayed here?
I thought it was fun, especially in this show where your like main protagonists are kids, teenagers, young adults. That I think it's more, or at least more in theme that the bad guys are more like
cartoonish.
More like a Hogan's Heroes,
yeah.
kind of bad
Or like an
guys.
A-team.
Yeah. Like stormtroopers in Star Wars that, horrible shots. Just like not a true serious threat, not a Hunt for Red October threat or whatever. Like they're more cartoony, which I thought was fine.
And going back to Murray, we said how he kind of let his guard down, but he was also upset when Jim shot those Russians. When he opened up and shot the 4 Russians that met him at the elevator.
Yeah, well, because I think Murray is, if we're going with like D&D tropes, I feel like Hopper is definitely like a ranger, and Murray is much more of like a bard. He's much more of like I'm going to try to sweet talk my way into this without anyone getting hurt. And then a great comic moment. Here comes Hopper with the machine gun, just being like, "I let one Russian go. I'm not letting any more on my watch."
I love,
but
I also love how they put on the suits, but they have all the bullet holes with like blood stains on them as they're going through.
But to me, that's perfect because a lot of shows don't do that.
But I love how the Russians didn't notice it, but
But even Hopper grabs some weapons. Whereas, how many TV shows where someone has one gun, they kill somebody, they don't grab the automatic weapon or something like that, they run without it. Like, grab the weapon. I mean, that's been since television was invented.
Not a guy who is obsessed with Miami Vice or Magnum PI that much. You feel like he's learned from the best at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Can we talk about another really cool scene? Was the funhouse scene and the mirrors and everything like that? I thought that again really cool colors. The first level or the second level with the tiger thing and the punching bag kind of things, and then the mirror zone on the third level. I just thought that was a really cool action kind of set piece with Hopper.
Yeah, I really do think this back half, I mean, starting with the horror sequence in the hospital, going into like the action sequence in the funhouse, it's just been such a diverse representation of genres in this season in particular, much more so than the first 2 seasons from what I can personally remember. And yeah, I mean, Hopper got to sort of be a badass hero in like the middle to back half of this season, between like him kicking Mayor Klein's ass and being like such a bad comp, to kidnapping and constantly fighting this Russian Terminator antagonist. Like, again, if you're looking for a way to send off Jim Hopper, this would be a way to do it.
He definitely he definitely had a hero's edit,
hero's ending for sure. And but again, I think if they would have fully wanted to go for it, then show him disintegrating, but they didn't. So it's really hard to say.
It's perfect. It's perfect TV. Even if he's not coming back, you want people thinking he's coming back, right?
He comes back at the very last episode of season 5, which might be the last season according to the Duffer Brothers. Actually, season 4 might be the last season according to the Duffer Brothers.
Joyce, you didn't wait for me.
And we I don't think it's been formally announced, but I mean, we're all pretty much in the same boat that this is going to have a season 4, right?
Yes. It has to, because of the way they left it, and it's so popular.
And and also the fact that apparently, like, I know Netflix never reports numbers, but I believe them and Nielsen said this just like absolutely broke any sort of records when it came to television streaming. So so they announced the actual viewership, which within 4 days of its release, Netflix reported that over 40.7 million accounts had seen at least 70% of one episode.
Wow.
And while 18.2 million had seen the entire season within those 4 days.
That's pretty amazing.
And Jack was not one of them.
I was not one of them. I screwed up the whole system.
Which that's insane. Like, to think of an entire season, 18.2 million people watching it in 4 days.
It's interesting because, I mean, to think that, this is a show where the last season was on 2 years ago. It's pulling on a lot of nostalgia, and I don't think the second season was as well received as this one. I definitely liked this season more than season 2. Maybe it's because I think I talked about this last time. I just have had more fun with season 3. Maybe it was the comedy. Maybe it was the wackier elements. Maybe it was the highs and the lows when it came to the emotions of it all. But this was a definite step up for me. But But I'm surprised that, people were so bought into the franchise that even if they were not huge fans of the season, or the fact that this wasn't really, in the zeitgeist for a year or so, that they still come back in droves to watch it. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think they played it right, because I think even for me, like season 2, like I liked it, but it wasn't like, oh my god, as much as I love season 1. So I wasn't like going into the season like we got our time set. We're gonna watch it all in one viewing, whatever. But they did, I think, a really good job with the promotion of it. Like they kind of dropped a clue last year with the Starcourt Mall advertisement.
Yeah.
And then they did a couple other clips, and they did so many cool tie-ins with like Burger King, the Coke tie-in. Like even at Target, they had a lot of cool stuff. They had an upside down My Little Pony, and it had the quote.
Oh, interesting. Was Erica interested in buying one of those, considering how nerdy she is?
Well, it had the quote from Dustin about how My Little Pony is nerdy, like on the side of the box. And it's like it's like a vintage 80s style My Little Pony. I mean, among all this other, I was just like, they did such a really good job, I think, in kind of making everybody aware that it was coming back, getting people hyped for it, and it seems like all that work paid off with that much viewership coming into it in such a short amount of time, which is insane.
How do you guys feel? I personally think my season rankings right now are 1, then 3, then 2.
Yep.
Though, and this is just going off of like knee-jerk reaction considering I just watched it, but the season 3 finale might be my favorite of the 3.
Yep.
Season 1 finale I loved, especially that just heartbreaking sequence where Joyce and Hopper find Will in the Upside Down, and we flash between him trying to bring Will back to life with like his daughter dying right before his eyes in the past. But this just had so much really fun stuff going for it, coupled with a really heartbreaking, yet just so, I don't know, such an important monologue from David Harbour at the end, and genuinely stunning way to break apart the status quo that it really left things on a high note for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, to me, it was just exhilarating. It was thrilling. Like, I loved, when they are hiding out in the movie theater watching Back to the Future. But then the score from Back to the Future, which I think is one of the best scores of all time, then becomes the score to the scene where Dustin's trying to, get in touch with Mike, but his batteries are low in the walkie-talkie. But it was so perfect how that was just like getting you more amped up, because that music was also Back to the Future had one of those classic endings where, there was twists, not really twists, but, new thing thrown at him after new thing thrown after other new thing thrown at him to try and get to where he needed to go back to the future. That I love that tie into it. And yeah, I think all the action set pieces in those last 4 episodes, the emotional, the story of Robin, Billy's kind of redemption, Hopper's possible death, the Byers plus 11 splitting up from the main party. I mean, just there's so much there that I think they hit that Empire note that they said they might want to hit in season 2, but I think they definitely hit that note in season 3, where it is completely different feeling than the end of season 1. But and there absolutely could be recency bias there, but I absolutely loved the end or the kind of final episodes of this season. Jack, how about you?
I agree with everything you guys have said. I did like, we haven't really talked about too much, the scene with 11 and Billy, where he's repeating what she had seen. Your mother was pretty. You were this. You're this. The waves were 7 feet, and he's just opening up, and then he has the hero's death. I mean, again, what I would say about Billy is I could have cared less last season if he would have died, or even halfway through this season. But at the end, I was like, don't kill Billy. No, I like Billy. I had a crush on Billy towards the end, so Mrs. Wheeler's gonna have to fight, for the affection. But I liked it. I thought it was, and I don't think after season 2 I didn't hate season 2 like a lot of people, but I wasn't like, okay, I'm ready for another episode. This one was like, oh damn, it's done. Yeah, and I know it's going to be at least a year before they come back, if not longer.
Yeah, I feel like we can't not finish our Stranger Things talk without mentioning at least this song, because
Yes.
I think it's a polarizing moment. I personally loved it. I mean, as a fan of musicals, I am always a fan. I know how reality breaking it is to have somebody break into song, background music and split screen included. But I mean, the actors were just having so much fun. It came out of nowhere, but it really harkens back to like being a nerdy kid and belting out, songs at the top of your lungs with your friends.
With Dusty Bun.
With Dusty Buns and Susie Poo. And I loved, what really made it for me was everyone else's reactions to it. Just them completely like mouth agape at having to sit through a 3-minute musical number. I know some people said, it derailed the action, but I thought it was like a really fun, like insanely comedic intermission between these two acts of just absolute nonstop action and horror.
Well, how Dustin didn't want to do it at the beginning. Don't make me do it. And then at the end, he's all into it.
Well, that's what I think the beauty of it is. Like, and I think it also kind of fit into that kind of nerd quest or whatever. Like, there's always like some type of different activity you have to do to like unlock the key or something like that. So I thought it was fun in that sense. I know that they wanted the two actors have both sung on Broadway. And they wanted to give the actor who plays Dustin a chance to sing something because he's has a very good voice. And they apparently
Susie Poo's been on Broadway too.
Yeah, she was actually Matilda in Matilda at one point.
Oh.
And apparently they're on nearby sets and they sang the song together and were able to harmonize the song without backing music, which kudos to them. But I think it was. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I know Colleen did as well. To me, it didn't bother me, even though I know I saw on the internet a lot of people were like really ticked off at Susie. But I thought it was fun. And again, everybody back off Susie. Back off Susie Poo. She had every right to be ticked off at Dustin.
Listen,
especially when you hear another girl's voice there.
Yeah. Listen, the Mormons face enough, harassment nowadays. Let's lay off of them for this instance, shall we?
I think Susie Poo a break.
But also, I don't think we've talked about it more last episode, but I think we also need to just say Erica, another breakout character. I know she had some moments in season 2, but loved her character this season. Loved her joining the Scoops Ahoy crew, and just the perfect level of sarcasm and calling bullshit on a lot of their stuff, but also being a secret nerd. And I love the last scene where they give her the Will's Dungeons and Dragons sets, and maybe her getting invited into the party. But I absolutely loved her expansion of that character in the season 2.
Concur.
Yeah, it's so weird because I think Erica was sort of built up as this like kind of like precocious, like she very much sort of filled that Rudy Huxtable position for a while, like hey, the cute little kid who actually is wise beyond her years and has sass for days. But I thought it was genuinely sweet when Dustin and Lucas come to her with the Dungeons Masters manual in the box, because it's weird to say, but it's like, I don't know, your heart is torn in so many places by having this group split up, because it reminds you of when you had to say goodbye to friends. And it's a lot easier nowadays when everyone stays in contact with each other in so many ways. But back when you couldn't do that, it's I could imagine just how utterly heartbreaking it is. And to have someone ushered in, to help fill the place in their hearts, I think was so surprisingly emotional. And that makes me excited, hopefully, for more of her, because I think she is so no nonsense. I also loved her batting it back and forth with Murray in the finale.
Yes.
We're like, Murray,
you bald bastard.
Well, yeah, Murray certainly has, I think, a know-it-all sense about him, especially since he was the one who Elected kind of confided in with the blueprints and the plan in particular. And America's like, no, you know what? I just spent like a whole day down there. I know this a lot better than you do, dude. So follow my lead.
Yeah.
Unless you want to die. Oh man. All right. Well, I think it's a good place to kind of close it out here. Again, all in all, I think we all loved it. Excited for the essentially guaranteed season 4. From what the Duffer Brothers said, they said 4 seasons seems too short, 5 might seem too long. So I'll be curious to see if they feel like they can end it with one more season. Maybe.
Do you think they could do like a 4th season of 8 episodes and then do like a 5th season of like 4 or 5 episodes?
Like a
so it's
movie
almost
kind
like
of ending?
4.5 seasons to hit that happy medium.
Another show tried that and it took a lot of heat.
I think, I don't think it'll be a Game of Thrones situation where, D&D decided to like just peace out without really putting any effort into it, story-wise anyway. I think maybe like an 8-episode season 4, maybe a 2-part movie season 5 kind of thing could maybe close it out.
If you're D&D, do you end season 4 like, okay, this could be the ending and people love it, and you go, okay, we don't have to do a season 5?
With the Duffer Brothers?
Do you take that because ending a show, there's so much pressure on shows now to end the right way. I mean, because if you don't do it, social media is going to be all over you, and before most people see it, most people's going to say they hated it. I'm just saying, if I was them, I said this with David Lindelof with Leftovers, I would play it safe. I would have the show, season 4 would end with maybe this is the end of it. If people weren't overly joyed, they'd say, oh, this is the greatest. I'm going to come back for a 5th season and try again. But if season 4 ends great, all right, next project.
I don't worry about it. I think they're in the driver's seat. I think, there's definitely maybe it felt a little disjointed in season 2, maybe a sophomore slump. But I think maybe they found whatever their North Star is or their guiding voice for, season 3. And they seemingly know where they want to go and where they want to end. So if they feel like they can do 5 seasons, go for it. And if they feel like 4 is enough, then that's cool too. I think they're in the driver's seat, and the Netflix medium allows them to kind of tell their story however they want to.
Again, I was coming from my point of view. I'm a coward, so I'm gonna take the easiest way out.
Well, I think what you're asking is like, will they pull like an Aziz Ansari, who did season 2 of Master of Love, and everyone's like, where's season 3? And he's like, you know what? I'm good at the place where I left it. I don't know if Stranger Things would necessarily do that. I think the Duffers just approach it in a different way. I think the movie idea is really interesting just because they essentially promoted season 3 as an 8-hour movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they'd be able to pack everything into like an actual movie. But I think that's an interesting idea. I mean, we have to get to season 4 first, which might not come until like 2021 at this point when they're applying to colleges.
The college years.
Well, some of us aren't getting any younger, so they need to step this up.
Well, Mike and I should still be around, so
it'll be Jay, Mike, and Erica are going to be podcasting the next Stranger Things.
Oh man. So yeah, I think
Erica go last so she can give her funny name.
She'd probably be funnier than Jack's one-liners, that's for sure. At least this season we only had 2 episodes to do, so we don't have to suffer through that too much. All right, well, I think that'll do it. Stay subscribed. I assume we'll come back for whenever the next season comes out.
Nope.
Yeah.
I know the feed kind of had to be restarted for this season
for 2 podcasts.
Yeah. But it'll still be there, or you get the whole enchilada. It'll always show up there as well. jayandjack.com/iTunes has all of our podcasts. Mike, I know you are doing an episode-by-episode breakdown. God bless you for that. Holy crap. But where can people find that wonderful podcast?
Yeah, so I am doing an episode-by-episode breakdown with the great Josh Wigler of The Hollywood Reporter, who also covers Stranger Things there. So at the time we are recording this, as Jack mentioned, we're recording this on National Slurpee Day. I believe tomorrow is when our episode or chapter 5 podcast should be released. And then after that, we'll be doing chapter 6 Monday, chapter 7 Wednesday, chapter 8 Friday. And then we'll be doing a feedback show the next Monday and a little something special to wrap it all up. But I will say, to your point, Jay, I really do feel like the back half of the season is when things get pretty crazy in terms of action and plot, and we really start having, we've had a lot of fun with the season so far, but when things go off the rails, so do we in this podcast. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been really great to hear everyone's thoughts and feedback as they listen along with us. So I'm excited to go into that. Other than that, I'm covering Survivor South Africa this summer on Rob Has a Podcast, and of course I'll be covering Survivor proper once it comes back in the fall. I actually was out on location for the preseason of
Ooh,
Survivor
fun.
39, so I have a lot of reflections on that. It was a truly amazing time. Felt like I was in the Upside Down, but a good Upside Down. So yeah, I'll be on. I'm sure I'll have a lot of other stuff to pimp out on my Twitter at a Mike Bloom type. But it was great. It was great to chat up with you guys for a couple podcasts. I'm sure. And once Westworld comes back in 2020, or maybe something else will come out sooner, I'd love to get the opportunity to chat with you guys again.
Absolutely. We always enjoy our time with Mike. We love having you on. And, of course, check out all of the things that Mike does, because it's amazing. It's way better than anything Jack and I do. Well, maybe just Jack.
Well, after Jay's comments, I'm done. This is my last podcast.
Do we think that this would be, Jack, is this a good representation of you? Is this a good way for you to go out? Or
Is
are
this
you going to
Hopper
say,
exit?
I'm ending, and then when people say, like, this wasn't such a great Jack podcast, you're like, I'm just kidding. I'm coming back again.
I didn't get a hero send-off. I know that, so...
Oh, man. Yeah.
I'm the Barb of this podcast.
No,
The
you're not
Barb
the
or the
Barb.
Bob?
The Barb.
But Wiggler is kind of famous for doing kind of parody covers. Are we going to have a Never-Ending Story duet between you and Wiggler at the end of the season?
Perhaps. And there might be some other stuff. Stranger Things is full of twists and turns. We don't want to foreshadow things too much, so I'll just leave it at that. I'll let the mystery be, to quote another show.
There you go. Jack and I are going to be in San Diego next week, San Diego Comic-Con. We're doing...
Someone's already here.
Yeah, you're already in San Diego, Jack, but I think we're doing our 14th annual Lost Fans Unite panel.
Someone asked if that's the longest running panel right now.
Maybe. I don't know. No, there's Kevin Smith has had his for. No, but he missed one year.
But he's missed 1 year. You miss a year, that breaks the streak.
It does.
Last year, like the Nolan Ryan of SDCC.
Yeah, the old wily vet. But yeah, it's this time. It's on Thursday morning, 11 a.m. I think it's one of the first panels of the show of Comic-Con. We'll be at the library again, and they're doing panels all over the place in downtown San Diego. I know they're doing it at the Horton Grand Theater, the Bayfront Hotel. I mean, they're all over the place. So
we could have been put further away?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean...
All right, so stop complaining, Jay.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. You're the one that complains. But Joe Garfine from Joe Opinionated and Cancer Gets Lost will be there. She also has a lot of goodies that Carlton Cuse gave her that was too much for... or too many things for her auction that I think she's doing this year. So she's bringing some prizes to give away at the panel.
Can I get one?
No.
Oh.
So...
Man, this is just a lose-lose for me today.
Don't miss out on that. Ralph Oppel from the Dharmalars podcast, as well as the Kaiju podcast, is going to be moderating it. Should be a lot of fun. I think, since the last Lost panel, the official ABC one in 2009, we've been the lone Lost panel representing every year. So come check it out. We always get a good crowd. Always a lot of new Lost fans. Like, people are just started watching it off of Netflix, or I guess now it's on Hulu. So it's always cool to meet new fans of the show, because it feels like something that happened.
That's the fun thing about it too, because I do think that like shows that like Lost and Sopranos and The Wire sort of like predated the peak TV era that started in the late 2000s, and so I have seen a lot of people say on social media like, oh yeah, I got into like Game of Thrones and Mad Men and Breaking Bad. Maybe I should get into Lost because I heard a lot of stuff about that. So yeah, it's a crazy phenomenon. I wonder if like Stranger Things will become that
maybe
like, 10 years down the line.
Absolutely, I think so. I don't see why not. It's just very, especially for Jack and I, we were so in it. We were so in that moment in pop culture, and it's just weird to that was almost 10 years ago that it ended, and it's very trippy for people that are just joining it now. But it happens all the time, and Stranger Things is a classic case of properties and stuff being so influential decades later and still being very relevant today. So definitely check out. You can check the programs there. Lost Fans Unite, 11 a.m. At the San Diego Public Library.
Don't be late.
Don't be late. Next Thursday, or this coming Thursday. because this is Thursday today. Anyway, thanks, Tack from Tokyo, Eckhart Richter, Maggie the Magnificent, Joanne with the Plan, Drake the Destroyer, and Ed the Creepy Mailman. Thank you to all of our patrons. You can become a patron today by going to patreon.com/JNJack. Join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/JNJackGroup. And again, check out jnjack.com for all of the other shows that are on our network. Ramblecast After Dark, and Broadcast going strong, as well as Broad Little Lies, Big Little Lies podcast from the Broadcasters. And Mike, Your Lovely Life guest hosted last week, I think.
Yes, and I believe this week, spoiler alert, a very much sought-out goal on Broad Little Lies was finally accomplished. I have yet to see the episode or listen to the podcast, but I'm very, very excited to hear some possible behind-the-scenes intel from this week's episode.
Yes, the Shandy Watch concluded, or we finally got to see Shandy in this past episode. One of the hosts on the show got to be an extra, but they actually pulled her in and had her do an actual scene with the actors. So it was pretty neat. I think that's this week's episode that they talked about it. So check it out. And all right, that's it. We've rambled on long enough. We'll see you guys next time. Hasta luego and goodbye.
Bye.
До свидания.